Hey, I'm Sam.
And I'm Greg.
And today we're reviewing The Hunt, a.k.a. Yankton.
What er der, vel?
Lukas!
Hej.
Kigger du lige ind et øjeblik?
Hvad er det for noget? Hvad er det, der er sket?
Ja, det kan jeg ikke sige. Måske det bedste, at du tager fri et par dage, ikke? Så kan vi få det her på plads sådan stille og roligt.
The Hunt is a Danish film from director Thomas Vinterberg. It was co-written by Vinterberg and Tobias Lindholm, I think is the other guy. They have a new movie that's actually out right now. I don't know if you knew this.
Rogue One. Oh, no.
No. Oh, my God. Mads was in Rogue One. Another Round. And it's again stars Mads Mikkelsen. And it's written by the same two guys again. But anyway, to The Hunt. The Hunt is a movie.
Roll credits.
So The Hunt stars Mads Mikkelsen. He works in a kindergarten. Through a brief exchange of miscommunications, he gets falsely labeled a pedophile, and the entire community turns against him. The Hunt from the title has kind of a double meaning, where it's the literal The Hunt is there's this like hunting trip. It's like a hunting trip. It's like boys trip, you know, where we see it at the beginning of the movie where it's Mads and his friends, they go on this trip. We don't actually see them hunting in the beginning, but it's supposed to be that same trip.
It's supposed to be clear that they enjoy hunting. There's like a
yearly
community
expedition.
Enjoys hunting.
Yeah, you see that they're all very close
especially
together.
With the kids.
They're all comfortable with each other. They're all friendly and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And then that circles back at the end of the movie where we see another hunting trip, but obviously things are much different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the literal hunt. The other form of hunt, the other significance of the title of The Hunt is
investigation.
Like witch hunt.
Yeah.
You know? It's that idea of a witch hunt, of a community turning against somebody falsely, like based on misinformation. That's one of the main themes of this movie, but this is a very thematically rich, heavy movie.
Yeah.
The Hunt is a very heavy drama.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of levity in this movie.
No.
Hardly any. I mean, there's some, lighthearted, funny moments in the beginning.
Yeah,
before
mainly
things
just the
get really
beginning.
Dark. Yeah. Because you're establishing with the real world, you're making it just interesting until this thing happens that's,
But those happy
life.
moments are setting you up to be even more like sad. Like the things that are happy is like how good he is with kids and like how much he like helps out this one kid, and it's like that's used against him later on, and it just makes it so much worse.
Yeah, pretty much everything that's like pleasant and seems nice about living in this community, which I like that we get a pretty good idea of like the size of this community, what it's like to live there, but pretty much everything that's like seems pleasant and nice about living in this place before everything gets really dark is the relationships that he has with all these different people,
Right.
We see all the friends he has here. We see like the connections he has at work, the connections he has with his best friend, who it's his best friend's daughter who ends up accusing him of these things, which just makes the situation like infinitely
so much more
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So the pleasantness of like enjoying these relationships he has in the opening bit just makes it extra heart-wrenching when these relationships are like one by one systematically demolished throughout the film.
And you're kind of sitting there with, at the beginning, there's a big group of friends that they're together, and they're all, and a couple other times they tend to drink together. We see a couple scenes of them drinking together, having a great time. They're clearly like good friends. They're not just like people amongst each other, They're not just acquaintances or whatever.
Especially
or
him
just parent friends.
Right. And they could be parent friends because, they must have children.
He had a child, that
Yeah.
was younger. But then you kind of watch this big group, and it's like, it starts to become like, who are his real friends and who are his not, Or I guess you can't say that because you're right. You said this one time, is like everything that happens in this movie, like you can't blame any character.
Yeah. That's
well, sometimes. So punching a kid, you can definitely blame him.
You can blame him, but yeah, that's one of the best parts about this movie is like everything is gray area. There's no black and white. It is black and white of he didn't do this thing. It's very, very clear that he's being falsely accused of this.
Right.
Which is, I think, good because if they left that graph, did he do it or not, then you would feel very differently about his whole situation.
Yeah.
But very clearly he didn't do this. It's just a misunderstanding. And I think what makes the drama so rich and so real in this is that there's no antagonist. It would have been so easy to have the child who falsely accuses him be like a villain, have them do it vindictively and be mean.
Which is, I thought, where it was going at
right,
first.
It kind of seems like that. But then you learn that, she didn't really know what she was doing.
Yeah, she's just a child.
And then she feels bad about it. And she tries to say, wait, no, that didn't happen. And then the parents are like, I think you're you're confused. You know, this did happen, and your brain's trying to block it out. And
it just shows like the ultimate gravity of the situation and how things can play out no matter what. Like, and how intense this kind of situation is. It's really insane. I definitely thought she was more of a villain, right? I thought it was gonna be like that kind of thing. Then I realized like, oh, she's just an innocent girl who got emotional and, you know, said some things, but then that's the truth of it is you can't go back from saying things. And like, how intense, like how his life will never change just from that.
Yeah, and it's just this one little comment she makes. It's not like she even like she doesn't like go to an authority figure and say this man molested me and lie about it. She makes this kind of like offhanded comment where she doesn't really know what she's saying. She's repeating something that she heard her brother and her brother's friend saying, who are older, and they go by her like looking at porn on an iPad or something like that, and they make a comment that she kind of repeats in the presence of an adult, and then the adult can connect those dots, you know? Right. They also could have made
But she was also like angry, so you don't know, maybe she was angry at him, so she wanted to use him in some spiteful... The way they shot that too, how she's like completely in the shadow.
They shoot her like a mafia boss.
Oh my gosh. It's awesome.
And they had another opportunity to make the kindergarten like principal or like the head of the kindergarten be a villain as well. The one who like kind of the kindergarten teacher is one who like really blows it up. She gathers like the whole community and says one of the children has been behaved inappropriately with.
Right. And she could have just kept it and then figured out and like let it be investigated first and then
she like brings in a it wasn't exactly clear who this guy was. She said he was a friend, but he was like a child psychologist, I think.
Yeah, I thought he was like
yeah, and then he suggests getting the police involved.
An investigator of some sort.
Yeah, I think he was a child psychologist. That would be my guess. So she brings in a child psychologist because she doesn't immediately jump to the worst case conclusion because she does know who Lucas is. That's Mads' character's name. His name's Lucas.
Well, like really well. I mean, like he's really good with the kids and like cares so much about them, and I think she knows that, and you can see it too. She acted that part really well, I thought. Like you can see how distraught she is, but how serious she needs to make it.
Yeah, because you can see the disbelief of, I know this person. I know he wouldn't do this. And then it goes to, oh, I thought I knew this person.
And then it becomes even worse. It's like, since how much she loved him, that turns into like how much she hates him, you know?
Well, because,
as opposed to like, I didn't know this guy and now he's like an asshole. She like is in disgust of him.
And she's like kind of blowing up even the story that the little girl told her. She's kind of like making it this larger thing. Yeah. Because then it starts being like, other children have been interfered with, to say it how the British say it.
Right.
That's such a weird way to say it, right? That's what they say in England. They say interfered with, which just sounds weird.
Yeah.
She has a really good arc of her own where it goes from like disbelief of, I can't believe this guy would do it, to, and like, oh, I know this guy. I know he wouldn't do it, to, I thought I knew him. I guess he would do it. And then it goes to, I know he did do it.
Yeah.
You know, like there's no doubt in her mind. She's so convicted in that belief. Yeah. Her conviction is like maximum.
Yeah, maximum conviction.
Like it's not like a one-dimensional character who like turns on a dime. It's a believable arc, you know, and a character who's not like a tertiary character. She's a pretty minor character in the overall thing, like screen time wise. I would say, like, but even then, she is the one who's like closest to being like a villain, like the antagonist. Right. But even then, if what she believes is true. But if, that's another thing.
Or that like, guy,
if what she believes is true, right, then she's the hero of the story, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's like the villain to our main character. But if you can like if you can divorce yourself from the reality that we know of, that he didn't do this thing, if you can put yourself in her shoes of going, this guy who works for me was behaving inappropriately with his children, then she is acting in a completely righteous manner.
Like the fact that she... Like, if he actually was doing that kind of stuff, the fact that she was able to, like, disassociate herself from who he is, right? Like, Lovely Bones, for instance, it was like, oh, everybody loves him. It can't be him. It can't be him. It can't be him. Or no one ever looked at like, that neighbor guy as, like, anybody who could do anything because he was so great, right? In this, it's like... You'd think it would be the same thing because he's even better, you know? He's, like, seriously a very nice guy, you know? But she was able to, like, remove herself from that relationship. That is some heroic shit, right?
Yeah.
Because then if he actually was, then that's what you have to do in order to catch that predator.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, that is like,
like
great.
If you flipped the story and you told it from her perspective, she's the clear-cut hero and he's the clear-cut villain. Like if we don't have the information that she also doesn't have, you know,
Right.
of knowing that he is innocent. If we're presented, oh, this guy's a pedophile, this kind-hearted kindergarten principal or whatever is going to rally the community around taking down this threat who's messing up all these children's lives and stuff.
Right.
She's the hero of that story.
You could shoot a movie in the opposite perspective.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool idea.
You know you got some good drama when the person who's closest to being an antagonist can just as easily be the protagonist if you just like pivot the perspective, you know? Not many stories have that, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, I should say, I reviewed this movie before, a very long time ago. This was like one of the first movies I ever reviewed, I think. I don't know if it might have been the first. I think it was either this or, weirdly enough, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. These were like the first two movies I reviewed, I think. I saw this in the theater, and I wrote a review of it. But it's awful, because I was in, I was like a freshman in high school, or maybe even in middle school or whatever when I wrote it. This is the first time I had rewatched the movie since seeing it back then, so it had been a couple of years.
Oh, wow. Few years, like 6 years.
Yeah, well, I saw it when it
Longer,
was in theaters,
8
when it came
years.
out, which was like 2013, I think, or maybe it was 2014 when it hit the U.S. and it was 2013 and like festivals and stuff.
Yeah.
So I saw it like when it came out, and I hadn't seen it since then. Now, part of me, this was the interesting part. If you remember when we went to watch it, I was like, well, I wonder if maybe it's not as good as I'm remembering.
Yeah.
Because I saw it at a time when like I was still kind of like exploring cinema, you know. So I was like, maybe I just thought it was so good because it was one of the first. Well, because it was like one of the first like really heavy prestige dramas I had seen or something, like a foreign film that's not like an action movie or a horror movie or whatever. It's just like a really heavy social commentary driven drama, you know? So I was like, maybe it's just because I hadn't seen anything like that caliber before. That's why I thought it was so great. But no, it completely held up. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a really incredible
The Hunt
movie.
is incredible.
It's a must-watch. Hold in the tears, I guess.
It's heavy.
It's
It's a heavy film. It's an emotional watch.
because it's so serious and it's so true. It's based on reality and like how things would play out.
You can see everyone's point of view. You can see every perspective.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
It's just like you want to villainize, but you just can't.
Yeah.
Because it's such a serious topic that you just
because you get you get why everyone would behave the way that they're behaving. Like someone will do something that you hate, and you're like, oh fuck that person for doing that. But then you go, oh, if I was in their shoes and I thought this was true, you would feel the same way. You might not act in the exact same way, but you would have like similar emotions to all these characters, or you can always empathize with them, knowing thinking what they think is true.
Yeah, I would probably be like a skeptical friend. Like I would be like, I don't blame the friends. A lot of the friends who are just like, when they're talking to him, they're like, I don't know what, like, there is nothing he could do. No face, no anything, no gestures, nothing he could do to say and convince others that he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it, is that he was guilty until he's proven innocent, which he will never be.
Yeah.
So it's so dark.
So let's talk about Mads first, because he's the headliner, of course.
This was my first movie besides Casino Royale with Mads Mikkelsen.
Okay.
I did see Rogue One, but I didn't remember he was in it.
He was just like the dad. They completely wasted him. Like Mads Mikkelsen is in Rogue One and in Doctor Strange. He was like the bad guy in Doctor Strange. And it's just such a waste of his talent. You can put anyone in that role, because it's just not a demanding role, you know?
No.
And it's like...
But he took it because he needs to make money.
Well, yeah,
or like,
because think about it from his perspective, right? He's either always playing a villain in American movies, because American movies have this thing where they'll only cast a foreign guy if he's a bad guy. It's just like a weird ethnocentric tick that American cinema has.
I hope it goes away.
Yeah, I think it's maybe starting to a little bit. Or he was like little side characters and stuff. And then he's doing really well in like the Danish film market over, right? So if he does this movie where he's like, okay, it's not going to stretch my acting ability, but maybe he's a big fan of Star Wars or something. Or maybe he just wants that profile boost, because once he's been in Rogue One, now anytime he's like trying to get a movie made as a producer or trying to get a movie made just as a named talent, he's got so much like more sway. He's got more suction, you know.
But then also he has his background from Denmark.
Yeah.
From Denmark, where it's like, oh, he has this whole catalog of films that are very serious and very involved in great acting, as well as blockbuster films. So he can really, he can satisfy us in all these ways.
Yeah, and I think part of it is maybe not for all actors, but I think for some actors who do like a big superhero movie or whatever. Like I think Chris Evans might have done Captain America for this reason. I'm not really basing that on anything other than just like the movies he's in, so this is just like my own theory. I think sometimes an actor will do like a big superhero movie, and they'll do it because it's a huge paycheck, and then they know, okay, I can spend my next 5 movies on like little indie projects that aren't going to make any money, and it won't ruin my box office appeal, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Like if Chris Evans does Captain America and it makes $1 billion, or you know, the Avengers movies or whatever, and then he goes and he can make Snowpiercer, which was a bit of a risk, even though it was also successful. He can go and he can make that little Gifted movie, and he can go and make like all these like little dramas and stuff like that. Mads Mikkelsen can make Doctor Strange, and then he can go back to Denmark and make like 3 movies over there.
Yeah.
Knowing that he's not gonna like lose name recognition in Hollywood and that kind of thing.
Whereas before it's like he makes these great movies in Denmark, but they don't go anywhere.
They don't really make it across.
And so even though they're really great, and like he really loves them probably, and loves how they came across and how they came out, he can't do very much with them. He probably gets tiring, you know.
It makes him a bigger name, so that when he does do a smaller project, it can bring in new audience members too, you know?
Yeah.
Like now when he goes back and makes a Danish film, he has some American audience members who found him through, you know, Rogue One or whatever, and maybe they'll go, oh, Mads Mikkelsen, I recognize that name because it's an interesting name, and then they'll jump over, you know? Mm-hmm. So maybe, I don't know.
So how do you think he did in this film?
I think he's incredible in this. I think it's his best performance hands down, and I would go as far as to say I think it's one of the best performances in any movie ever.
Wow.
That probably sounds like hyperbole, but I mean it. I don't know. What do you think? Would you put it that highly? It's one of my favorites for sure. Maybe
for
that's
me,
putting you too much on the spot.
No. I just wanted to answer correct. You know, honestly. So for me, a good actor, I feel like it kind of, you know, exponentially teeters off to a point. Like you can have bad actors, and then you can have like good actors, and they keep getting better, and then that kind of gets to a point, and I'll explain that. And that point where it teeters off is just like once I can no longer tell that they are acting whatsoever. You know, if I'm completely immersed in a character, they're the best actor I've seen. Maybe it's just that movie that they're really good at acting, but
I'm talking performance.
All I can say is his performance in this movie. I 100% believed in his character. I saw him as that, and I loved what he did with the character. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I thought he did fantastic.
Yeah, he does things in, like, all of his emotion is so raw, and a lot of it's very understated. Like, he doesn't have, like, a bunch of screaming and shouting scenes and a bunch of crying scenes and stuff. He has a couple of those, but they're, like, very carefully utilized, you know? Like, he does have the big emotional scenes, but there's so many other scenes that could have been, like Oscar baity performance moments. You know what I mean? Where like you scream and you smash stuff or whatever, right? Like that's like how you get an Oscar.
Right.
You got to be big and loud.
Could have been that, you know, where he's yelling and
that church scene is perfect.
Very powerful.
That's like cinematic perfection. That church scene, everything about it. I love that scene. I cannot say enough good things about that scene. That church scene is amazing. I'll play a clip of it.
Yeah.
It's so
I was gonna say I've seen that clip when you talked about Mads Mikkelsen before on your channel. You really liked that clip. Mm-hmm. So I was gonna ask, is that your favorite scene in the movie?
That's his biggest scene. Mm-hmm. I think it's an overall performance. Like that big scene works so well. Like seeing that clip out of context isn't giving you the full picture, because everything in that church scene is so strong because of everything that came before it. Because we've spent the past hour and a half watching this guy try to keep it together. Trying to like not make a scene, trying to be reasonable,
trying to be nice to the kids still, trying to be nice to Clark.
Exactly, trying to figure out what exactly he's been accused of, because no one will like come right out and tell him right away. Trying to logically like explain why he's not these things or whatever. This is his final straw moment where he breaks down and he has his big moment finally. It's so much more powerful because he's resisted doing that for the rest of the movie preceding that.
Så kig lige ind i mine øjne. Kig ind i mine øjne. Kig. Hvad kan du se? Kan du se noget? Hvad siger du? Bare ingenting. Der er ingenting. Der er ingenting. Du skal lade mig være nu, det skal jeg. Ej, helt ærligt, Theo, du skal sgu lade mig være nu. Okay? Så går jeg, tak.
Right. He feels like such a real person that it makes all the hardships that befall him hurt so much more, hit so much harder.
Yeah.
Because we feel like they're happening to a real person.
Right. We watch this person who's just a normal human being with a son that he's trying to figure out his stuff.
Yeah, he has his own
guy.
drama. Like he's divorced with his wife, and that's a bad relationship.
Right.
His he gets a girlfriend who he works with.
Yeah.
His son is coming to live with him. He's got plenty going on in his life. He's not like a blank slate guy that this bad thing gets like forced upon.
Right.
He's a real dude.
No, and then it just feels like this person that you enjoy and think he's just a nice guy in the community is turned into, no matter whether we like it or not, is turned into this icon, this subject of evil. And it's so hard of like, oh my God, why do all these people hate this guy when you know the truth?
Right, and all these things about him.
You can't do anything about it. Feels like I can't do anything about it. That's what that movie made it feel like.
Yeah.
Like even if I was like, no, look, he did, they wouldn't even, There's like no going back.
There's so many admirable things about him, and the movie is able to like tint those admirable things into something despicable if you can view it from the other characters' points of view.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Clara's outside because her parents are fighting and he walks her to school. That's like a very kind, nice thing to do. But then when you view it from the lens of people who think he's a child molester, him like holding her hand and walking her to school, it seems like horrible.
Walk his dog,
Yeah, like her coming over to walk his dog. That seems like him
working in a kindergarten
her in and not being kind. Him choosing to work in a kindergarten stops seeming like he's doing it because he's good with kids and he wants to help kids and stuff, and it starts seeming really gross and nasty.
Even dating that, the French woman, I think she was French,
Yeah.
From the kindergarten, or dating
it starts
her.
It's like a cover or something.
Yes,
like
right, some sort of cover.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to say some other really notable moments for me, I guess, with his performance. I would say the scene where he's like talking to his son when his son comes to him for the first time, right? Just his eyes speak so much. Like he did these little things with his eyes that was just like, I don't know, like he would open his eyes a wide for like a second, which just meant very human reaction of like he clearly still sees this as ridiculous and how hard it is for him.
Yeah, Mads is a very restrained actor, I think. Have you ever seen the show Hannibal? He plays Hannibal Lecter on that show.
No.
Okay, so he's fantastic on that, by the way. Honestly, it was a tough call, but he overtook Anthony Hopkins as my favorite Hannibal Lecter, which I know.
Wow.
And Anthony Hopkins, that's like one of the all-time great performances, is him as Hannibal Lecter. And I think it probably comes down to Mads has a lot more screen time because it's a show with 3 seasons, so it's a little hard to compare them like 1-to-1, but he really makes that role his own. Wow. But he's so reserved and like understated and subtle about everything.
Yeah.
And his co-star on that, Hugh Dancy, the two of them are like good friends, I guess, in real life. They met on some other film set before they started working together on Hannibal, so they have like a good bond or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it was Hugh Dancy who described Mads as the best actor working at micro expressions, like these really, really subtle. Like you can miss them if you're not paying attention,
Yeah.
Like if you're
That's
just
what I'm
like
saying.
listening,
Like a split second where his eyes open up.
Like if you're like forget the fact that he's not speaking English. Pretend you speak Danish, right? Mm-hmm. And you're just listening to it. You're gonna miss so much of his performance if you just hear the words, hear his like vocal performance. Not that he's like not doing a lot vocally. He definitely is, but he does so much with these very subtle like. Tiny little expressions in his face, these little changes, the way he's like listening to someone else speak. It's
very
so
human.
Subtle.
It's very human.
He
at least from this character, he like knew how to portray that character.
Yeah.
He just could get in that character and in that position where that guy would be, And I was just, it's extremely impressive.
Yeah.
To get yourself in that, I don't know. Very impressive. But I want to note a couple others, just kind of like going down.
Oh, wait, real quick. I just want to say, on that point of the like, expression
micro
thing, right?
expressions, yeah.
Going back to the church scene, one of the things that I love about that so much, one of the things that like seals the deal of this being like one of the best performances ever, I think, is he has that moment where he tells the guy to look in my eyes, and the guy, where he's like crying and he's like, all bloody in church, and he's holding on to this friend, the father of the daughter who accused him. and he says, "Look in my eyes, there is nothing there," right?
Right.
And that look in his eyes is so... it's perfect for the character and the moment, and I don't think another actor could do that moment, you know? I don't think anyone but Mads could pull off that moment in the way that he does it, as well as he does it, you know? You give that moment to any other actor, I don't think they could do it. Something special happens in that moment, that look in my eyes moment. He does something special there, you know? That I don't think is like replicatable, duplicatable, duplicable. Replicable, that's the word, replicable. He does something special in that moment that I don't think is replicable.
Even that one sounds weird.
It does.
That's not your same cup, Sam. What is this guy doing? Okay, so another moment I want to talk about, I'd say, is like with his girlfriend, I guess at the time, whatever, like the French girl from the kindergarten. That moment where he shoves her out of the door and he's like, get out, because he's realizing that, like, I don't know, I felt so strongly, like, very strong feelings of just like he was having trust issues about everyone around him.
Yeah.
You know, it's like both ways. The people in the community are like, we don't trust him and whatever. Yeah. But then he also gets to a point where he's like, fuck you, I can't trust anybody. Well, like nobody believes me. I can't get anyone to believe me.
Yeah, I think his trust issue, like, it's not like an exact inverse, I don't think. Like, other people are like, we can't trust you. I don't think his thing with the girlfriend is, I can't trust the girlfriend. I think it's, she can't trust me. Like, it's still, the trust is still going that way, but it's like that he can't handle it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's like, this is someone that he thought he could still...
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like, he thought she was still on board. He thought she knew him well enough at that point to know he would never do this kind of thing.
But then he kind of realized, like, how intangible that kind of still is.
What happens is she shows some doubt of whether he's innocent or not. And she basically is like...
Like an inkling of doubt.
Well, and she's basically like, I'll stay with you regardless. Right. You know, like, even if it was true, which is really interesting. Yeah. And that's like a whole other layer on its own. Yeah. But, like, that's the vibe I got from her. She's basically like, if you did do what they're saying... She does ask him. She's like, did you do this? And then she's like, I mean, I don't care either way.
Right, that's like really, very weird about her character.
Right, and I think that might be part of it, is maybe in that moment he's like, you would be with someone who actually did these things? Right. And you have, like, you would ask me that? Like, you don't know me? You could doubt that I would actually be
like, it's
innocent,
clearly,
you know?
Since the whole thing has happened, it's clearly been, like, an unsung thing. Like, they haven't, like, talked about it. It's kind of just, like, an obvious thing. Like, oh, you know, we get each other. Right. You know? So this is the first time that it's actually talked about. For a viewer, we're waiting for them to have this conversation, even a little bit. Yeah. So for him, it's like so obvious that the second that she does that, it's like, okay, so this isn't what I thought it was. And that's crazy. But taking that scene specifically with his performance, his acting, very subtle little, like, the looks in his eyes just speak. You can see him start to react to when she's talking. Yeah. You can see when he's, like, starting to have those thoughts of, like, aggression, of, like, but sadness, aggression, sadness, like, depression, like, all these things, all
very complex emotions, you know. Not like everything in this movie is not felt in one way. It's felt from, like, all these angles all at once.
Yeah, like scared, worried, like angry, pissed off, sad. Like it all happens like so quick in fleeting moments. Yeah, that's how we think.
And he's got, it's this mixture of, like, fear for one's own safety and self, and anger at the people putting you in that danger. You know. Yeah. And those are, like, really hard things to convey at the same time. They're, like, perpendicular emotions, you know, being afraid for your safety and wanting to, like, destroy whoever's making you feel that fear, you know. But then, like, those two emotions are battling each other. It's really complex, complex stuff.
I think his posture and his what would you call it, like how he moves his body language says a lot in those regards too, because he may be looking like scared, but he's, like, his body language is very aggressive, you know, like in the church scene, for instance. Okay, but I want to notate that scene for sure, for his acting performance. The scene with his son, when his son cries, whatever, when he does that, those looks around, like, just, he opens his eyes a little bit wide, and it just says so much about what's happening. And then the moment with Clara, when he's, you can see how much he's struggling, right? So
which moment with her?
I'll explain. So he opens the door. Someone's knocking at the door, and him and his girlfriend right before that scene, and it's Clara, right? And for an audience member,
this is after the accusation and after his life has like been pretty much completely destroyed at this point.
His life is. You would think that he would be villainizing Clara the most, right?
Yeah. You even said out loud. You were like, "Oh, slam the door in her face."
Yeah. And it's like that's very clear that that should be the reaction. Except the truth of the matter is as a responsible adult. Who he is. He doesn't want to make this
He doesn't want to make this little girl feel bad, even though she's destroyed his
heartbreak. I cried at that moment.
Yeah,
that's when I cried. Is at that moment because it's just so heartbreaking to see how good of a person he is.
Right.
And it's like, oh,
to the person who destroyed his entire life.
And you see it with him too. The way he talks and then he gets angry too. He has a little movement with his hand where he gets angry, where she's like, "Can I walk your dog?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Okay, yeah." And then he's like, "Where are your parents?" He remembers, like it's clearly just a conversation between the two of them at first. Like he remembers that relationship, and it's
he's
like
holding so
they have a
back.
dynamic, and then he remembers, like, the whole thing that is happening, and he gets aggressive, and he puts his hand in a fist a little bit, just like very little, like he isn't like, I don't know, just very subtle.
Yeah.
And then he gets angry at her, and he kind of walks toward her, and she steps back a bit, and then he steps down to her level. Like I don't know, if, that just to me was like wow.
Yeah.
Just
the way they shot
steps
that was
all
so
the way
too.
down,
yeah,
like
you
lower
see him
than
lower.
her.
Mm-hmm.
Even lower than her, and he's just
like he doesn't get on her
guy.
eye level; he gets below her level.
Yeah,
and that's such a deliberate choice. Like that's not an accident.
It's great too.
Yeah.
It's such a good thing to do with a kid for the first off, and it just says so much. Like someone like that could not hurt a child. I mean, anyone I guess can, but.
Right, but it really speaks to his specific struggle.
Even in this moment, he still wants to make her feel comfortable. Yeah. He scared her.
He wants to make her feel comfortable. He doesn't want to make her feel bad.
And he's like, it's not, it's okay. It's going to be okay or whatever. And she's like, well, can I still walk the dog or whatever? But just the way he handles that and then taking that and then the next scene and putting them together is just emotional roller coaster because you're just sitting here so tense knowing all these things.
Oh yeah, the tension is insane. It's more tense than like most thrillers.
Yeah. It's not like thrown in your face either, you know? It's not like the tension should be she opens the door and he goes, "Get the fuck out of here," and slams the door. Right. That's how I feel in my heart.
That would be reasonable for it to happen, Like if the movie had that would be fine.
Right, it makes
this
sense.
Is so much more complicated.
Worse. Yeah. Good, but just so it hurts so much more.
Yeah. He like has this assumption of like, okay, people are thinking I'm doing these things, but my friends know who I am. They know I won't do this.
Yeah, and I can't imagine.
Remember his really big, huge friend who like is at the kindergarten?
Yeah.
When he's like walking out of the kindergarten, he talks to his friend as if like, yeah, you know I wouldn't do this. He talks like they're on the same page,
and you can clearly see the guys.
And then the friend is like,
against him.
Yeah, he's like, never talk to me again.
But the truth of the matter is these are all dads. Yeah. Like all his friends are pretty much parents.
Yeah.
And so they
have to be concerned for their own children.
Concerned.
Yeah.
Two things that happen in this film that are like inexcusable, I think. And it's just no matter how inexcusable it is, I understand the hatred, but it's just immature adults acting immature.
Yeah, sure. But it comes from a place of character, which is important.
The ones I'm talking about is obviously the grocery store scene where he gets kicked out and then they throw cans at his head. That's awful.
That's so brutal. Like,
it is.
The impact of that can, you feel it so
I want to say that to you earlier too. Yeah. It wasn't even like a hard thud. It was just the sound of the can.
The sound of it. Well, but also the way it's shot, like you don't see the guy throw it. You see him on the ground already hurt and then just right off his head. Oh, and
they're sizable cans.
Yeah, and there's a thing where like it's interesting, right? Where like a can to the head is not as violent an injury as like someone getting their arm chopped off, right? But as a human being, I feel like you can like feel that sensation of like we know what it feels like to have like a can hit you on the head because we know the weight of a can.
Yeah.
We've probably dropped a can like on your foot or on your hand or something.
Or like a baseball thrown at your face in baseball
like
instead
of,
I
feel like
hurt. It's a different kind of hurt.
And I feel like the average person can like sort of imagine that sensation a lot more easily than like getting alien acid blood melting through your skin and stuff. So even though that's like more violent, more graphic, you feel a can to the head a lot more brutally because you know how heavy that is. You know how like the top of your head is like kind of soft, you know?
Yeah. Those hurt me the most because I understand that.
Yeah, they're like
you know?
visceral in a way because you kind of know what they feel like.
That can, it's just like, oh, I felt his head crack, even though we didn't hear any of it.
Well, his performance sells it too. His performance really sells it too. Yeah. Like his body language, how low he gets on the ground. You know? The makeup is very realistic. Like it doesn't like draw attention. Yeah. It's like the tiniest little bit of blood.
Yeah, that too. The makeup in this is awesome.
The fact that it's such a minuscule amount of blood. Like there's only like one little drop of blood that it's papered, or maybe like 2 little drops or whatever, and you can barely see it in his hand the littlest bit. It being such a minuscule amount of blood makes it feel like, oh, it's not makeup. Because it's like if it was makeup, there would be more of it, you know? Right. It like tricks you into making it feel more real. We should mention, we don't have to go too into detail on it, but Thomas Vinterberg, the guy who directed it, along with Lars von Trier, he was the co-founder of the Dogma 95 movement, the cinematic vow of chastity, which is the set of rules that filmmakers have to abide by in order to make their film part of this Dogma 95 movement. And the rules are incredibly strict. I'll probably make a video about it at some point because I find it really interesting. I kind of want to make a movie in the Dogma 95 thing, but they're like very strict rules. Rules as strict as like no lighting. You can only use natural lighting. You can't use a tripod. Every shot must be handheld. The only microphone needs to be mounted on the camera.
That's insane. That's like one of the most insane ones.
You can't use props. You can't have any like frivolous violence or murder or anything like that. There's all these super restrictive rules, and some of them are like, maybe they're like a little obtuse or a little overbearing or whatever, sure. But the whole point of them is to like strip away the artifice of storytelling and make everything more real, you know? Make everything about the characters and about the drama. Make it all character driven. And this movie, The Hunt, is not part of the cinematic vow of chastity. It breaks a lot of the rules. Breaks most of them, honestly. But I do think you can see those roots in this movie, you know? You can see the stripping away of artifice to get to what's real, I think. Because obviously those are things that this director values.
Yeah, and I love that kind of stuff too. It makes such as what seems like a simple drama, you can make it so which having realism, just it being more genuine. Oh yeah, like the more genuine you can make it with the characters, it I don't know, it just blows it out of the park, I guess.
Let's talk about some of the other performances real quick, because we only really talked about Mads. I want to give...
What do you think about Clara's performance?
That's what I was going to say. I want to give such like props to that young actress, because I think she's great in this, and it's such a... There's such complex emotions to get from an actress who is like 8 years old or something.
Yeah.
She's like 7 or 8 years old, and she really is like kindergarten age in real life. Maybe she's like a year or two older than the character.
Yeah.
I'm surprised she hasn't like done anything else yet. I guess she's probably just in school, you know. She probably didn't like want to be like a child actor. She's probably just like in school living a normal life now.
Right.
She doesn't have any other credits or whatever. I am so like blown away by her performance in this.
Do you think that it's her performance, or do you think it's the way that they were able to manipulate her?
I think a lot of it is clever direction.
Yeah, because I could see the moments where, you know, a lot of times when you shoot with kids, it's like they just look in one direction and they like they're told to do something, whatever, and they kind of just talk. They always do the thing where they talk to the side, like, oh no, I don't know, right? There was moments of that, but like it's the way. I don't know, the way, I guess maybe the person that they positioned, the placement of the person that's talking to Clara or something like that. It just, and the moment in which that happened too, it was really perfect, like the editing.
Like you can shoot her from all these angles, and you can use the Kuleshov effect to, you know, try to like make her performance seem more impressive, which they're definitely doing in some areas very well. Like if you're not familiar with the Kuleshov effect, I don't think anyone would notice it. And it doesn't detract from it, like it never like breaks my immersion or anything. They're definitely using that like to their benefit, the way it should be used. I was looking for ways that they could have improved her performance, because it does seem like better than an actress that young should have been able to deliver. I think it's just like that director really knows how to work with children, or maybe this specific actress, maybe this specific young actor, because she's doing things. There's plenty of like lengthy takes where she goes through a lot of dialogue, and you can see her emotion like change throughout the shot. It's not like they were like, okay, you're sad in the shot, now say this one sentence. Right. It's not that. It's like lengthy scenes where, you know, where she goes from like this moment, she feels so much like a real kid is another thing. Like a lot of movies, children are tiny adults, you know, and they just act and behave and speak like adults in little bodies.
Yeah.
And that's like what a lot of movies do. She
Yeah.
feels like a kid in this. Like the things she says are things that a child would say. Like when the child psychologist is talking to her, right? He's asking her these questions, trying to find out if it's like a figment of her active imagination or if she really was, or if Lucas really is at fault, right?
Right.
And what that
she looks like she doesn't
scene,
just doesn't want to be there. She just wants to go outside to recess.
She's like
because she
looking out the
doesn't
window to
understand.
recess. She doesn't understand the gravitude of that situation, the magnitude of that situation. Right. So she's like, I want to go outside to play. She says, no, this didn't happen. And they go, are you sure? She's like, I want to go outside and play. I'll tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah, I could feel that right then and there, that I was like, wow. I don't know. It took that moment in that movie for me to realize, like, holy shit, in this scenario, that actually would happen.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to another movie, I feel like I would be like, you know, the girl's been planning something, she's like manipulating or whatever. It was that moment in the movie that I was like, oh, she is just a kid.
But this thing is hurting her where like she starts like, she makes this comment without knowing what it means. When she sees how much trouble Lucas is in and how much everyone is freaking out, she tries to say, oh, I was, it wasn't true, right?
It probably confuses her like crazy that didn't
and
work.
And then the parents are like, and the teacher and her mom are like, no, this did happen. Your brain is trying to suppress it. Yeah. And then she starts believing that. She starts going, I don't know what actually happened. And you really feel the like, confusion of her. And she tells that to Lucas. She's like, they're telling me this thing happened and I can't remember it, but I don't know if it happened or not. It's such a, I don't know. I feel like you really buy it and you believe that it's coming from like an 8-year-old or however old she is.
Absolutely, yeah. 100%. When I was watching that, I completely understood what was going on.
Everyone in this movie, like, there's not a bad performance in it.
No,
not every character has as much meat on it to work with, but everyone gives a good performance. I want to talk about the dog scene though.
I wanted to ask you about that too.
A lot of movies have like this kind of exact scene where there's like the main character, they have a dog, and then at one point something comes crashing through their window, and then they go outside and they find their dog dead. Like that exact moment is in Secret Window, that Johnny Depp Stephen King movie, right? Mm-hmm. This movie just does that moment so much better than all the other ones. Like it's so much more emotional in this one. It's really sad.
Well, the dog is a really big piece of the first half of this film.
You spend so much time with the dog. The dog's constantly there. The dog is part of the relationship between Clara and Lucas. It's not just dog, it's Fanny, the dog, who and you hang around with them as they play with the dog and they walk the dog and stuff. Yeah. So
it's not too obvious, because if you make it too obvious, then you might know once it starts to get to a drama that someone's going to kill the dog. But I didn't even think.
Right, and it's so well executed where like the dog's in like a bag and they don't like show the dog. They just show him open it and their reaction to it and the way he like tries to hide his son from it and the son goes anyway. And
how real that is, yeah.
I love that there's a point where like Lucas is trying to keep the son, and then there's a point when Lucas stops trying to stop him, and he's just like, okay.
Yeah, why bother? Yeah. Right.
He's like, okay, go ahead and see it,
Yeah.
And then there's this, we talked about this edit already off camera, but there's this edit I love when he's burying the dog, where he's in this like little grave for it, and he's digging, right?
Yeah.
And he picks up the dog, and like as he's about to lower it into the grave, there's a jump cut, and then he's standing out of the grave looking down at it.
Yeah.
It's just this like, it's one of those moments where editing does something that you can't accomplish in a medium outside of film. You can't do that feeling of he's in the grave, he's about to lower the dog,
and it's so heartbreaking watching him lift this lifeless dog.
Yeah, these
and like you're about to watch him bring it, and like you're already gone. You've gone the whole entire way emotionally, and then just a cut and not like finish that out.
To jump cut to him standing completely upright. It's like this total juxtaposition of motion, this downward motion, to rigid, upright, motionless. That's a crazy juxtaposition. Also, just like the height of being lowered in the grave to him standing like with like good posture, like uptight, but still looking down at like where he just was. You can read so much into just that one edit, and you can't do that in like if this story was a novel. You don't get that moment in a book. There's no way to do that moment in a book.
No.
There's no way to do that moment without editing. Like if it was one shot, you don't get that moment. You need that edit there. And I love when you can get something that's just purely cinematic, Like I talked about in my Francis Ha video essay, that like push in that happens is a moment you can only get in cinema.
Right.
Whereas a lot of moments happen in filmmaking in general are moments that you could tell in a book, or you could tell in a thing that was without editing, or you could tell in like a radio play of it or whatever.
Right.
I love
because in the book it would just be she sits by the window or whatever, Or in the, or she shits on the bed. Or she shits.
She shits on the bed. It's much different. Yeah.
It's a slow creep with her shit. Whatever. You know what I mean.
I think I want to talk about the ending a little bit, so we'll give a spoiler warning now. This isn't really a movie that's...
Spoilers!
Well,
we don't need that.
I was going to say this isn't a movie that like can really be spoiled. Like, I think if you know the ending, it's not going to hamper your enjoyment at all.
No,
you know?
No.
So like, if you haven't seen it and you hear us spoil it, I don't think it's really going to affect your viewing. If you want to go in cold, then this is where the review ends for you. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Before we talk about the very, very ending, I just want to talk about we jump a year into the future, and then it seems like everything is kind of resolved. Anyway, but it's like his relationships are patched up. He's back on. They're on their annual hunting trip again that we saw at the beginning of the movie, and now it's his son's like rite of passage thing. And there's a scene that does something really special. And that's the scene where they're in this, the big mansion again.
Yeah.
And they have the ceremony.
Yeah, the ceremony.
And then Lucas like wanders off to the kitchen, and he sees Clara off on her own, top of these stairs.
Yeah.
And she can't cross the kitchen because she has this thing where she doesn't want to step on cracks. It's like
she's just a quirky kid. Yeah, she's just got an imagination. Don't step on your crack, you break your mother's back.
Exactly. What's the word for that? Superstition. She has this superstition about stepping on cracks, right? That scene has this like wholly unique type of tension to it, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't think there's a scene that is tense in the same way as that scene that I've ever witnessed before. It's incredibly tense because it's basically like he's putting himself into a situation where the misconception about him before could like boil over all over
because if people
again.
Walk in and he's alone with her.
He's alone with her, and he picks her up and carries her across the kitchen. It's like when she's like in his arms, and she like even like hugs her arms around him, which is like symbolic of her moving past it.
Yeah.
But it's like he knows how it could look if you were viewing him the same way as before, or if you had like any doubts in your mind.
Or maybe as a character, he knows that, doesn't want to do it, and needs to say to himself like I have to do this, he knows that this would turn out bad. He's not just saying like fuck it, fuck them. He's just like, I'm not going to let this ruin everything. I'm going to get past this.
And he's like risking so much to still help this child who like ruined his life, to still make her not feel bad or to make her feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like she's all sad over there. She can't join the party. He's like, I can alleviate her suffering. But he has to put himself in such risk. It says so much about him and about her, and it creates this a type of tension that I think is unique to this moment. Have you ever seen tension in that regards of like a completely innocuous situation where the tension is derived from someone perceiving it the wrong way and having all the goodwill that he's earned back completely crumble again? I've never seen a tension like that. And like when I see that scene both times, my stomach is like in knots. I'm like, don't do it. I'm like, don't be kind to this little girl, which is such a weird sensation to have a movie make you on the edge of your seat, urging your protagonist to not do something kind for an innocent person.
I know.
It's amazing that it can craft that feeling in you.
Yeah.
I think it's
No, absolutely. I was sitting there the entire time, just like
I was on the edge of my seat.
What the fuck is gonna happen?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Yeah.
It's not tense by any like standard metric,
No, it's just you went through the entire emotions of everything that happened in the action and everything that happened emotionally in the film, and the film is over. This is a year later now. Basically, is what it feels like. Film is over. Like all that emotion we're past it clearly.
Yeah.
And so it just takes all of that and puts it back on your head. Yeah. And it's like, here it comes again and worse.
When he makes the decision to like cross the kitchen to go to her, it feels like he's pulling this rope and like suspending an anvil above his own head.
It feels like he's walking over lava, like in a really thin.
Which is like she's trying to walk over these cracks that she has this superstition about. But it's like he's the one walking over danger. Mm-hmm. That's a cool bit of symbolism. Yeah, she's afraid to walk on these lines because of superstition. Him walking across those lines is actually dangerous.
Yeah.
Whereas for her, it's just like perceived really cool. danger. I never thought about that. And then I want to talk about the very ending where the person shoots at him. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that?
I love it.
Because when it happened, you were saying like, "Don't end here, don't end here."
It sucks. It's the worst ever.
I want to know in what way.
Oh, it hurts so much because it just says that... But
in a good way or in a...
No.
No?
No. Okay, good way as in filmmaking, yes.
Is it a good film? Okay, yeah, that's what I want to
It's a fantastic way to end a film because it's like, fuck, that's emotional.
Yeah.
Emotional way to end the film is just like, ugh. That was just, I don't know, really well played out. But like, it hurts. That's why it sucks. Is because it means to me, it meant to me like, he's never getting past this.
Yeah.
The true and hard reality is that some people will always have their suspicions.
Yeah.
And people will always have it out for him, you know?
Yeah.
And
this is like a shadow over the rest of his entire life.
Yeah. It's really awful.
And I think...
And it makes sense, though, at the same time, though, still.
Right.
Like,
you can still
like,
see it from that perspective. Because that person is thinking, this monster got away with it. That's what that person's thinking, you know?
Yeah.
And again, that person could be the hero of the movie, if you flipped it, you know, to their perspective. They're like, they're hunting the pedophile who got away, you know?
Yeah. Hero cop.
Speaking of like highlighting Mads' performance moments, I think again in that ending, he's incredible in that ending. There's just the look on his face.
Yeah.
That mix of fear or it starts off as like just terrified, right? But then it's like this understanding, and then you can just see the full gravity of it just hit him. Not of I was almost dead, but you can like see it wash over him of this is the rest of my life. Yeah. And I also think...
Almost you see him saying, like... It almost looks like he's saying to the guy after a second is like, shoot me. You might as well.
I think you can read a lot into the look on Mads' face as he, like, returns to his feet. Because the shooter's there, like, aiming at him. And he very deliberately has this, like, look of determination as he returns to his feet. I love the camera work there. It's, like, kind of unsteady. It, like, rises with him as he's going back to his feet. And I think... I don't think it's like just shoot me if that's what this is going to be. I think it's him. I don't even know how to describe it exactly. It's like almost too complex to nail down succinctly. But I think it's this thing of like, I won't let you. Like, I'm not going to lay down and take this because I know who I am. I'm going to stand almost like a crucible kind of thing, you know?
Well, it's the same the way he addressed the grocery store situation.
Well,
he was like, I'm not going to lay down and take this. I know who I am. And walked in with fucking, blood coming down. Kind of and he's like, I'm going to get my groceries, you know? Yeah.
I don't want it to sound like hyperbole, but I know it's going to sound like hyperbole because what I'm going to say is hyperbolic. I think this is a perfect film. I think it's incredible. I give it 100 out of 100, you know?
Whoa!
10 out of 10. Yeah. There's not many... Yeah. I don't give like perfect scores very often. I think it's a perfect film.
Wow.
This film is incredible.
Woo-hoo!
I think it's excellent. I think it goes so above and beyond in so many areas, and I don't think there are any like flaws with it. You know, there's so much to dissect and to analyze. Like we've been talking about it for an hour or however long. Yeah, there's so much to it. The performances are all incredible. It's really excellent. I'm glad that this film did break out a little bit more than a lot of Mads' other films. Like it got some Oscar attention. You know, it was nominated for Best Foreign Film. I think it fucking lost though. Let me see what it lost to. It was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscar. No nomination for Mads Mikkelsen. The winner was The Great Beauty. The Hunt deserved more.
That's frustrating. I'm mad it didn't get anything.
Deserved more love. And Mads deserves more credit as an actor, and not just to be like foreign guy to play villain. You know,
that's really frustrating. He's actually really good.
He's such a talent.
This movie did a lot for him. Yeah. He's probably up there as one of my, I think, most anticipated actors. Like when it comes to a movie, I'm wanting to see. Like I definitely want to watch the rest of his definitely one of my top favorite movies.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think my favorite drama.
Two big, huge recommendations for The Hunt. Check it out if you've never seen it before. It gets a huge old stamp of approval. I'd say it's up there with like best films ever made. I mean, I'm going to put it up there. I know a lot of people probably wouldn't go that far. See, I don't think I would call it like one of my favorite movies, but I would call it one of the best movies, you know? And I love it for that reason. So check out The Hunt if you've never seen it, or if you have seen it, give it a rewatch. Because even though this was the second time I'd seen it, I was so gripped the entire time watching this. I was like, I couldn't look away from the screen. even though it's not like a big plotty movie, there's not like tons of action and anything like that going on. It's mostly just like
the action
conversations and stuff. I could not look away from the screen for like a second.
It's also a really beautifully shot movie too.
We didn't really talk about
it's a really cool area
it's
as well,
excellent.
and the town is shot nice. And
we're getting back into review. We got to finish the wrap up.
But yeah,
subscribe to Brickwall Pictures. That's this channel, by the way, if you didn't know. Subscribe to this channel. Check out more of the stuff on here. Check out more of our reviews, some video essays, and subscribe. Stick around. I'll see you on the next video. And this is just my voice, by the way. That's what I sound like. So,
fuck off.